Welcome to the Online Prosperity Show. I am Jon Goehring. I'm going to be the next guest, and I'm super excited for this conversation with Prosper, where we dive into the ins and outs of the radio industry, what I do at StoryTrust Media, where I'm the founder and I work with podcasters and content creators to help tell their stories and build their audience's trust.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and on the show, we dig into real stories, real solutions, and the untold strategies behind building a meaningful business. So if you're fed up with maybe content clutter, struggling to cut through the noise, or just watching your message get lost in the shuffle, this is going to be the podcast to look out for. So I'm thrilled to welcome the man, the myth, the legend, Jon. How are you doing, sir?
Prosper, I'm doing great. That's about the nicest thing that's been said about me in a long time. So I appreciate that.
Oh, we haven't even started. I kind of feel a little bit starstruck right now because your voice, not only is it going to be on the Online Prosperity Show, but it's been heard across the US on radio stations in not 20, not 25, but 27 states. That's a little bit above half of America has heard your voice at some point. So congratulations, my man.
Well, thank you, Prosper. And I got to say, it's a long, arduous journey, like to get to where you want to be in life. And I'm certainly not there yet, but success is a journey, man. It's not something that happens overnight. So I'm excited to dive into some of the steps that I was able to do to get to the point where I'm at, knowing that just like with all of us, we have a long way still to go in front of us.
Absolutely. Well, talking about a long way, I've got a lot of questions that I need to ask you. But for those that are meeting Jon for the very first time, and if you haven't heard about him, well, you're about to. He's the founder of StoryTrust Media, the mastermind behind making brands unforgettable through podcasting, audiobooks, and storytelling. And you can tell from his voice, like I was saying, he has actually been involved in radio, and now he has taken that expertise into podcasting. So this is something that not a lot of people are able to make that transition. But as you would know and understand, podcasts are just little mini radio segments that we can play over and over again. But with radio, once it's done, it's done. So the clarity and also just the structure that needs to be in a radio segment is completely different to what a podcast would be like. So he's actually had a lot of real life training. And as I've said, 27 states all across America. Now, Jon, I mean, I could go on and talk about things that I am not even qualified to talk about. I don't even have the radio for voice. Tell me, what was life like, while you were doing full-time radio work? What was your typical day sort of like?
It's a great question. Very intense, very upbeat, a lot of fun, and also it was demanding. So I started doing morning traffic coming out of college because that was the opportunity that they give the young, ambitious kid who wants to get up at 4 a.m. to do radio and nobody else does, because let's face it, after a few years of that, we all get sick of it. And so that was how I started my day. And actually, I worked in radio in college at the end of college while I was taking my final semester of classes. And I'd get up at 4 a.m. excited to do morning traffic, go in, tell everybody about the roads, read the sponsors, do all those things that I always wanted to do in radio. And from there, I'd go to school and take my classes and participate in college radio there. And then I'd come back and do afternoon traffic because I just couldn't get enough. I was getting paid minimum wage, only several hours a day, and driving 30 minutes each way to get to and from. I don't know if I was even breaking even, to be honest, with the gas prices, Prosper, at the time. So I don't know what it did for me financially, but it certainly was an amazing experience to get to know the ins and outs of the radio industry, to work on my voice, my delivery. That was all so important. And as a college kid, I'm not going to lie, it stroked my ego just a little bit when a couple of the professors are like, "You're John. You're the traffic guy on Warm 101.3." And I'm like, "Yep, that's me." And I was still in college. So that was exciting, man. But I do have to say that that was just the beginning, and there was a lot to learn from there. And I was totally in over my head, but loving every minute of it.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for opening us up with that. Now, John, you said you used to drive 30 minutes each way. So while you're driving, did you get even tempted to start, reporting on the roads that you were on at that particular time?
That's funny because I used to actually kind of use that as a little bit of personality because, just a little bit of insight into the radio world now, especially everything seems to have gone what we call syndicated, which is basically there are people in other cities who are broadcasting on other cities' radio stations. So with traffic, there's a random guy or a lady in Atlanta looking at the Rochester, New York map and going, well, this is what the roads are like, and just kind of reporting a bland like, okay, 390 is congested at this particular area, blah blah blah. Read the sponsor about Roto Rooter or the local plumber or whatever, and get on with your day. But what we found at our radio stations is that local still matters, and so injecting a little bit of that personality, and you don't want to go off on a long trail, but saying, oh hey, I was on 390 earlier and noticed the construction over there off the left lane. Saying the things that people are really seeing while they're on the road versus what somebody sees on a traffic map on Google Maps in Atlanta, it makes all the difference. And that's what I learned from radio, is that building trust with your audience is the most important thing. And the way you do that is you put yourself in their shoes. And me driving those 30 minutes actually kind of served as a way for me to study for those reports that happen later in the day.
Absolutely. So you actually broke even because you had free study time.
That's
so
right.
That you would actually look better, on the radio station and things of that nature. But obviously, some people grow up to want to be a fireman, a policeman, or an astronaut. Why radio for you?
I love telling stories.
Right.
It's my favorite thing to do. Storytelling is one of the most ancient practices, right? I mean, we have all of these different roles and advancements in technology that are great, but none of them go back as far as storytelling. Storytelling, from the beginning of time, storytelling was important, and it still shapes our narratives today. We just tell stories in different ways. Maybe people love movies. Even video games have a storyline, right? Without a story, what are we really doing? Our media is all centered around stories, and that's why I loved radio. Now, of course, radio, as we talked about earlier before recording, the face for radio certainly helps too, because you could go into radio, you could go into TV, you could go into print. I did a lot of print in high school. I ran a blog and worked for the high school newspaper, which was award winning, by the way. I'm really proud of that, but that's neither here nor there. I used to do print, and that was fun, and I could have seen myself going down that career path, but print, quite honestly, the industry just wasn't doing so well at the time. And going into college, I happened to walk by the college radio station during my student orientation there, and I was hooked. That's all it took. And from there on, I just chose that path and have been in it ever since and have no regrets.
Oh, absolutely. Now, there's something that you mentioned about storytelling, and also, how stories have always been the medium or the tool of conveying a message and things of that nature. What was it like at dinner time? Were you given a platform to actually tell those stories, or the people around you? What was their sort of feel like?
Growing up, you mean?
Yes, growing up, yeah.
Growing up, yeah. My parents set the example by being great storytellers themselves. My dad is a traffic engineer. Not the most riveting job in the world. I design roads and bridges, but a nice job, for a really nice job. And he became very successful in that role. And he made a way of making mundane things like some roundabout or some intersection or some traffic light somewhere into a really interesting story. well, this is what actually happened with this traffic light. We're driving around town and we stop at a traffic light. And he says, did you know there was a lady who emailed our office and was really upset about this particular traffic light and asked for some sort of warning sign or whatever. And this is why this sign exists in this place, because of this old lady who was upset about walking her dog or something like that. And as a little kid, of course, I would roll my eyes and go, okay, Dad, nobody cares. But growing up, I realized that was the power of storytelling. I mean, it's one thing to be good at your job. It's another thing to actually be a powerful storyteller while doing your job. So that's one thing I learned by example through osmosis. And then just my parents encouraging me to tell stories too. Like, how was your day? Tell me about your day. Not just, what happened from start to finish, but how did that make you feel? And so storytelling growing up was a big part of my development.
Absolutely. You know what that just made me think of? Road engineers are always telling you how fast or the pace at which they're working. And sometimes they make you even notice it because of the sign that they have. It's either stop or slow. They're telling you we're working a little bit slow here. So just so you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean? That's funny. Yeah. And then reporting on traffic, I will say I had a solid upbringing to be able to report on traffic growing up in a house where I lived with a civil engineer. So yeah, I know a thing or two about the local roads, but obviously I don't think anybody else cares about that but me, but still.
Great stuff. So your career, you obviously were working on radio stations and, as we say, 27 states, and things like that. How did the progression go? You did mention you were being given those filler sports, but then what was it like, as you progressed with your career?
Yeah, well, two things that I really had a passion for, that I grew passionate about in college. And the one thing was storytelling, which, like we said, those roots were all throughout, but they really sprouted while I was in college. And I realized the power of stories in so many different ways. And then the other thing was an entrepreneurial mindset. And that was something that, after reading some books and learning a little bit about what it takes to be an entrepreneur and understanding that it's a whole different mindset, right? I mean, entrepreneurs just think differently. And that inspired me to, while I was working in radio, try to find other entrepreneurial opportunities that existed. Turns out in radio, especially whether it's unfortunate or fortunate, sometimes the best limitations are also the best opportunities. And with a lot of radio jobs being cut, there was a need for a lot of outsourcing. Like, hey, we don't need someone to sit in the studio and be a radio personality all day long here in the studio. We need to outsource to someone who does something called voice tracking, which is basically recording pre-recorded little radio segments and them airing at specific times during the day. So you don't even have to be from the specific area. Like I said before with the traffic reports, it's always nice if you are. That adds a nice local flavor. But I got opportunities voice tracking for stations in other states. I found through some mutual connections opportunities to do commercials for stations in other states, or radio imaging, which is like those little, I don't know, Prosper, if you still listen to radio, or if you just, listen to podcasts and that kind of thing. But those little jingles in the middle, or that the announcer guy who comes on and says, "You're listening to WBZA," that's known as radio imaging. So I got all these different opportunities and end up doing a bunch of different little projects for stations all over the United States, and now I've been able to be heard on the air in 27 different states. So that was all part of that entrepreneurial mindset that started while I was in radio and now has expanded into what I do today, inside and outside of full-time radio.
Now, when I was growing up, obviously listening to radio, people used to call into radio. So now that's no longer possible if all those things are pre-recorded, right? Is that what you're saying there?
Yes, most often they may have some live morning shows at big stations, but most radio stations, at least here in the U.S., not a whole lot of live going on. I don't know if that's also the case over where you are in Australia. I believe it is in most cases, but yeah, unfortunately, I think it takes away a lot from the spirit of radio. But radio hosts will fake call-ins, to be honest with you. They will use AI tools to have people on the other end of the call say whatever they want them to say. And it's kind of a crazy world out there. And yet there are still certainly some real time, phone calls. Most of them are pre-recorded though. And it definitely changes the world of radio. And it's hard as somebody who's worked in it. You can never unsee it. Once you see it happen one way, you can never unsee it. And now I hear all these phone calls and I'm like, yeah, that's fake.
Sally,
unfortunately, that's the case. Yeah.
All right, so at what point did you then realize, wait a minute, I need to start shifting gears? I mean, obviously, yes, I do have the voice for radio. I could actually use it in so many different other ways. Was there a specific moment that would have happened that you wanted to then say, you know what, I think no one is coming to save me?
iHeartMedia laid off over 2,000 employees in January of 2020. Now, they're a huge nationwide conglomerate with over 850 stations here in the U.S., and I know they're international too. But they laid off over 2,000 employees on one day in 2020, early 2020. This was before the pandemic, right? Like right before the pandemic. And that moment was, I guess, the straw that broke the camel's back. Now, I didn't work for iHeartMedia, and I didn't feel like I was in danger of being laid off at any particular moment. But I thought, you know what? I got to get in front of this. I want to hop on top of this trend. And of course, that was also because throughout my time in college and beginning a career in radio, I was thinking to myself, well, I still have this entrepreneurial mindset, and my vision for myself is working for myself eventually, not being in this radio role forever. And then that sort of was the little kick in the rear that was like, hey, Jon, maybe this stuff is happening sooner than you think it is. Maybe now is the time to jump ship.
2,000 people, that's a lot of competition in the marketplace all at the same time. And each and every one of those people has the expertise and experience to go set up podcasts or be sound engineers in places like that. Did that cause any sort of internal pressure on your part, or did you ever think, oh my God, am I even going to make it with all these people out there?
Yeah, the beginning of my business life, I guess, if we're to divide my life into when I worked for someone else and when I worked for myself, definitely was some tumultuous times there, business wise, because it was a challenge. I mean, you have so much competition in the landscape, and it felt like everybody was doing the same thing. Like, everybody has a voice, so everybody wants to be a voiceover artist. And okay, so we have all these commercials and audiobooks and video gaming projects to go around, but only so many people, or only so many projects for all those people. So it felt like there was a lot of competition in the voicing world. And that's when I decided that my passion for storytelling goes beyond just voicing a character or putting together an audiobook, but actually being part of the whole process. And that's where StoryTrust Media was born out of that. I will also say that early on, my big mindset, my flawed mindset, and this is relatable in any business, it was a mindset of competition. And competition is great, don't get me wrong, but this fierce competitive nature for trying to win these jobs over other people. I remember one time doing an audition, because oftentimes in voiceover, you do auditions, right, to see if you're the right fit for the job. And the audition called for a 55-year-old woman. And I said, you know what? I think I can do this. And I tried doing the audition for the 55-year-old woman. That was a moment. I didn't get the job, by the way, obviously. That was the moment when I said, Jon, what the hell are you doing? Yeah. Come on, man. You're trying to be everything to everyone. And that was that competitive mindset. It was a scarcity mindset. There's only so much to go around. I have to grab onto everything that I can, even if it's taking away opportunities or trying to take away opportunities from other people who are much more qualified than me. So it was changing that competitive mindset into one of growth, one of abundance. One of Carol Dweck has a great book about this, by the way, called Mindset. One of abundance that was all about, hey, how can I collaborate with people, including 55-year-old women who might be better for some of these roles, and we all win. So that business mindset changed everything for me, because early on, you're right, with all that competition was a huge struggle.
I mean, obviously, you can't be everything to everyone. Even ice cream has got different flavors.
That's funny that you bring that up, because that was when I realized that was when a mentor of mine I was on a call with, and he said, John, you're an ice cream flavor. And I was like, wait, excuse me? What does that mean? He said, well, everybody has a different ice cream flavor. You think of yourself as either better or worse. Like we got to get better. I have to get better. No, it's more about the right fit. Are you better than someone? I don't know. It doesn't matter. Are you better for this role? Do you like vanilla, or do you like cookies and cream or butter pecan? I mean, you're a different ice cream flavor. Embrace that and become the best ice cream flavor that you can be. I love that you brought that up.
Now, let's go to StoryTrust Media. The name. What does that mean to you?
When you tell your story, you build trust. Authenticity is such a buzzword. I mean, how often have we heard, be authentic, be authentic? And then you look on TikTok and Instagram and like, there are no way these people are being authentic right now. That vacation was not that fun. That purse was not that expensive, right? Like, I feel like authenticity is such a buzzword, but real authenticity, I believe, happens through telling stories. And that's why with StoryTrust Media, I help my clients tell those stories through the power of podcasting and audiobooks in the case of authors. And I believe that that's the most powerful way for them to build trust, because trust really is the currency of business, is what I've found. Is the more trust you have as a business owner, no matter what industry in, the better off your results are going to be.
Oh, absolutely. You see, the thing is, when you tell stories, you're taking someone on a journey. You know, you're getting them to understand your point of view, and also you're helping them clarify things in their own in their own head. And radio has always been the media that ushered so many different things in our lives. Even television was on the back of radio and things of that nature. Now, when you are working with maybe authors or entrepreneurs so that they can tell their story in their podcast, what are some of the traps that they actually stumble on, which you help fix, especially when it comes to them really, really authentically telling their story out there?
Number one trap that they fall into is they make themselves the hero. They make it about them. And I fell into this early on too. Well, I'm doing a podcast. That means it's about me, right? No, you're facilitating a conversation. You're providing value to your audience. But the only reason podcasts are successful is because hosts don't make them about themselves. The work of Donald Miller, who's a brilliant marketing mind, is really relevant here. And he suggests in business as a whole that you position yourself as the guide and not the hero. I believe that's similar in content. When you're creating content, yes, it's got to be about you in the sense that you may be the subject of the content, but you are not the purpose of the content. It may be about your day or a story that you maybe ran across a problem in entrepreneurship and this is how you solved it. Yes, the subject is you, but the purpose is not for you to feel good about yourself that you told that story. The purpose is that your audience gets value out of that story and doesn't make the same mistake themselves or whatever the case may be. So that's the number one mistake I see is podcasters want to make their podcast about them because that's only natural, right? But the key is actually working backwards and thinking, what value can this content provide for my audience?
Absolutely. You know what I like about that? Let's just tie that back to your your traffic report days, because when you're giving that traffic report, it's not for you, the person who's giving the report. You're giving it for the driver to be able to navigate traffic, telling them of whatever hazards that are there. And then they feel empowered to follow your directions, knowing what's ahead of them, instead of them having to come into some sort of congestion or a pylon that they didn't know existed. I mean, I don't know how you feel about that sort of, overlook, because if people don't understand that, that's the reason why a lot of podcasts don't actually make it, past 3 or 4 episodes. Because once you're done talking about yourself, then what? What's next? What's left for you to keep perpetuating that podcast?
That's a really good point, because oftentimes we see that, right? It's like, well, I've told all my stories. All the tricks that are up my sleeve are gone. Now what, right? It's like, well, the audience didn't click on this podcast to get to know you, to learn more about you because you're that fascinating of an individual. No, they clicked on your podcast because it provides a problem, or it provides a solution to the problem that you're facing, right? And even if that's entertainment, right? People, well, what about the comedians out there? Like, people are buying them, right? They care about their stories more so, but deeper beneath that, why do people seek out comedy? Is it an escape from their lives? Is it something that they can share with their friends and have more social status because they're familiar with this comedian? Either way, no matter what, it's always about solving a problem that the customer has, even if it doesn't seem like a problem on the surface. So yeah, positioning your podcast and remembering that throughout, because it's so tempting to fall away from that, but remembering it's really about, what problem am I solving? I'm the guide, not the hero.
Absolutely. I like that. I like that a lot. And it also helps you. Part of the thing that you help people is clarity, sharpening your message so your audience instantly understands your value. Can you just maybe walk us through what that, what that actually means and how you help people with that?
A lot of times when business owners come to me and say, should I have a podcast? This is what I tell them. I think it's really important to gain clarity and to communicate clarity about what you offer and how your services provide value to others. So I had a coach come to me and ask me whether or not podcasting was the right thing. He's a coach in the HR industry, of all places. And I don't know anything about HR. All I know is that you don't want to go to the HR office, right? It usually doesn't mean good things. But I realized that a lot of people are like me. They didn't really understand, what is HR and what do you do as a coaching HR professionals? Like, what does that even mean? And so we work together to create clarity through podcasting. So the formula that I like to tell people that I believe is creating content is 4 words. It starts with content, which creates clarity, which builds trust, which drives results. So it's content, clarity, trust, results. That's the process, right? You create content, and it doesn't have to be a podcast, but I've found podcasting, as you know, Prosper, is a great way to get your message out there and build authentic relationships through the content you create. And that creates clarity. Who are you? What do you do? Again, your podcast isn't all about you, but it does create that clarity because you're having those conversations that demystify some of those terms. Like in my client's case, what is an HR coach? I mean, nobody knows what that is, right? And then all of a sudden you build trust because you're having authentic conversations. And I believe trust drives results. And there's a lot of data that backs that up. So that's really the where clarity fits in that process.
Oh, absolutely. I like that a lot, because not only are you repeating certain things about your work, you're also making it clear to yourself. And repetition actually makes it easy for people to actually understand certain things. Now, some people might just argue and say, podcasting is dead. And like we have already established, there's a lot of competition out there. Every other coach, consultant, and their dog plus cats these days, if they can actually harness them, are having a podcast, themselves. What would you say to that sort of remark, or what's actually happening in the arena?
Well, there's 4.4 million podcasts as for the last data that I looked at. Might be more than that because there's more dogs and cats starting them every day, right? But how many of those podcasts actually produce consistent content? About 400,000 of them produce weekly episodes. Less than half have gotten past 10 episodes, which is amazing to me. So many people start podcasts and don't continue with them. There are a lot of RSS feeds out there because somebody had a grand idea for a podcast and they gave up after 3 episodes because only their mom and their dog listened. And so there's a lot of podcasts, but what really cuts through the noise is the ones that are consistently producing content. Now people will say, well, still, Jon, there's only a certain amount of sponsors to go around and monetization is very hard. You're looking at trying to get to 30,000 downloads per month to monetize your podcast. That's why I don't believe that the biggest ROI for podcasting is monetization. it's great if you can. Don't get me wrong. I'm not anti-monetization when it comes to podcasts. If you can sell a sponsor and have a big enough audience where a sponsor actually wants their message on your show and pays you to put it on there, or pays you to wear a certain shirt or a hat or do some read about why saving 15% on your car insurance was so easy through them, then great, That's awesome. I'm not anti-monetization, but the real ROI in podcasting, I believe, is the relationships built through the conversations that you have. Prosper, you and I wouldn't know each other if you didn't have this podcast. And that's awesome.
There wouldn't be a reason for us to even connect. You know what I mean? Like, I do understand and I value what a lot of people want, the allure of being a celebrity or being known and also being paid to do what you love. But I think podcasting or even writing a book actually is a gateway to your business, all right? Because I viscerally believe people need over 7 hours of having to listen to you and understand you in such a way that they now start forming the awareness of the existence of your brand. Now, podcast is just leverage, because if we do an hour length of a podcast, all we now need is 6 more episodes, in order for us to then clock that 7 hours, instead of me wanting to maybe be paid $2 by a sponsor, well, sponsored by Livelong Digital, but then, being wanting a sponsor, it takes you away from the core essence of actually taking your customers on a journey, which then creates that clarity, which then creates that trust that you're talking about, and the ultimate results for your particular business. So I don't know, what do you think about that?
It's brilliant. Exactly. And you can shoot for monetization. You can shoot for those, say, 30,000 downloads a month as an arbitrary number to get to what you need, where a sponsor would say, okay, this is worth investing in and paying you some money for. You could do that. The same habits that you're going to create around your podcast to get you there will also get you other places, even if you never get there. So where else will it get you? Well, it'll get you closer to that 7 hours that you talked about. That's a brilliant point. It'll build trust with your audience, open new doors. And then here's the kicker that I always love too. It helps you create content. And this is where my offerings at StoryTrust Media are a lot different than some other podcast producers and stuff, because it's not just about the podcast. The podcast's not the end goal. The podcast is great, and people do actually listen to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all those, but the end goal is having an entire content creation machine, right? Like here, we're having an hour-long conversation. How many little nuggets can we pull that you said, Prosper, that I said? We can put them on video. We can put them on a little graphic. This is value add content, and people can take those little reels, and if they never listen to the full hour conversation, they'll see that little reel and they'll think of you. So that content is so key, and people are always sitting around. I don't know. I know you're on LinkedIn a lot. I am as well. And I get this a lot. What do I post today? I don't know. I woke up. I got to post something on LinkedIn. I don't know. I guess I'll just post another picture of me in front of my
sandwich.
Yeah, exactly. And just write something half inspirational. Now you can build out your entire content calendar with actually relevant, real value adding content through the power of podcasting. That's why I believe it's so important.
Absolutely. And also, I'm going to be upfront, and I'm going to say this with utmost love and respect. Half of the time, all you just got to do is create a platform, and people will start reaching out because they're also on their way to go somewhere. You just position yourself instead of you be the person with the net chasing butterflies, and half of the time you're not going to catch them. But if you just stand in one position, butterflies will start anchoring on you, and before you know it, it just works out perfectly. Now, some people might think, why would I need to work with somebody like Jon if I could just hit, record and publish by myself? Why would somebody need to go through a person like yourself?
Great question. And they really don't. I mean, how's that for the best business development message of the day? You don't need to come to me. But no, in all honesty, Prosper, what you're doing is great work. You put the podcast out there. Your LinkedIn is next level when you're talking about owning your media. I mean, next level stuff right there. You got it figured out. Not every business owner has the expertise that you have or has the time. or feels like doing it, to be honest. That's what StoryTrust Media is all about, creating clarity and building trust and driving results through podcasting for those brands led by people who don't do podcasting, who never thought they'd be a podcast host, who don't even really know where to begin, and then who certainly don't have the time or the expertise to repurpose that content. But what I found is those people are the same people who are sitting in front of LinkedIn each morning with a cup of coffee, banging their head on the keyboard going, what am I going to post today? Those are the same people who really should be doing a podcast because it creates an evergreen content creation machine for them, but they're intimidated to start because their background might be in something totally different, like engineering, for example. So those are the people who I believe should be working like someone like myself. It doesn't have to be me. There's a lot of other great people who do similar things. And I feel like that can really take your business to the next level because, again, it's all about building that trust. It's not about having a podcast just to say, oh, I have a podcast. Well, everybody else does too. Great. How are you leveraging that podcast to build trust? That's what makes the difference.
Absolutely. So how does it work then? Does somebody have to come into your studio, or can they work from anywhere in the world so that they can actually start recording, and putting this stuff out there through your work?
Yeah, the vast majority, we do it remotely, which is the beauty of podcasting right now. It's our conversation right now halfway across the world. You're eating breakfast, I'm eating dinner, right? I mean, it is a beautiful thing. And now there's other remote tools that make this very easy and high tech. Now I do have a studio that I have had people come in before, and some clients prefer that, and that's perfectly fine. But I think as we continue down into the virtual world path, a lot of people prefer, the vast majority of people I've spoken with anyway, prefer that accessibility and ease and convenience of, I just have to hop on a Zoom call or something comparable to a Zoom call, click on a link, and there I am. And Jon will help me record my episode right there with my guest. And then as soon as I click off of that Zoom call, it's done. The rest of that process is the ball is in Jon's court, so to speak. So that's the power of it. And yeah, the remote podcasting, I don't believe takes away from the quality of it at all. Because like our conversation right here, I mean, do you feel like our conversation would be any different or better if we were in person?
Oh, you can imagine I'd have to wear pants, in order for me to.
Yeah, imagine that. That's funny.
So I mean, I do understand them. So many other people look at other well-established, podcasters, maybe like a Diary of a CEO or somebody of that sort of nature, or Alex Hormozy, and then they'll be like, oh, I want my podcast to look like that. But you got to start somewhere, and I feel like people really need to just, play according to their own strengths, and you can start by just, like you said, remotely, and it works like that. And you're building trust, through leverage. And you talk a lot about the role of trust. And you often say trust is like a currency. Could you maybe give us an example where building trust versus maybe people that are just chasing instant gratification made a huge difference for either yourself or for the clients that you're working with?
Yeah. So for me, building trust has been everything, because I did chase that promotional early on in my business career. Again, I was trying to be everything to everyone. And so I would put out posts that would say something like, need a voice actor? Call Jon today at blah, 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 blah. Nobody operates in business that way. Nobody, that doesn't work anymore. So I was trying to reach a mass audience, thinking that if I threw enough spaghetti at the wall, some of it would stick. That's not a trust building exercise. That's a numbers game. That's the whole idea of, well, if I can reach 100,000 people, 99,000 of them will be pissed off at me. Another 900 will be neutral, but then the 100 people that actually need my service might consider, maybe on a good day, reaching out to me. So that's a numbers game. Trust building to me is, instead of 100,000 people that you don't know, that you're blasting random messages at, why not take 100 people? And this is what I did. I have this thing called the Hot 100. I actually borrowed it from a friend of mine. It's not an original idea, but the Hot 100. These are 100 people that are either prospective clients, past clients, good connections, referral partners. And now as I have grown, it's a little over 100, but I still kind of like the concept. Start with 100 people, not 100,000. That's all it takes. How do I build trust? I make sure I'm contacting them at least once a quarter. And that could be a simple check-in, how you doing? That could be a simple providing them a personalized video and saying, hey, I was just thinking about you. I hope you're doing well. With those personalized videos, people respond so well to them. They say, wow, I really thought it was nice of you to take the time. And it doesn't take that much longer than sending an email or a text message, and it's way more personal. Or I might write them a recommendation up on LinkedIn, something every single quarter for every single one of those people. And that's how you build trust with people, is you do it one at a time in the business world. Certainly podcasting is a great way too. That's how I like to, that's how I make my living, is by saying that you build trust through podcasting, because you do on a scale of 1 to many. But for me, as I started in my business world, it was really reaching those people on an individual basis and finding ways to provide value to them. Again, it wasn't about me. It wasn't, hey, let me tell you about me. It was, what about you? What ways can I serve you? What ways can we collaborate? And the law of reciprocity kicks in, and ultimately we end up having a good win-win partnership.
Oh, absolutely. And I quite like, how you play your game, because you coming onto the podcast, you send me a personalized video, and half of the time I just respond back to people, yeah, figure it out with the link, and then find your way to me somehow. But you took your time, and yeah, that was pretty cool. And automatically you earn trust. And what that also did was, every time I would see you in my newsfeed, I'd pay attention. You know what I mean? I'm like, this guy is actually making time and things of that nature. Whereas other people just blend into the newsfeed, and it just doesn't work like that. So now, if somebody is keen on maybe finding out what StoryTrust Media can do for them, or just checking out some of the work that you've done or put out there, what would be the best way for them to get a hold of you, or where can they go on the internet?
Yes, 2 places. StoryTrust.media would be the website to go and check out, samples of work and all that kind of thing. StoryTrust.media. And the other place where you can definitely reach me is on LinkedIn, because I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I feel like that's the most trust building and authentic platform there is. Certainly, there are exceptions, right? But I've found more authentic people on LinkedIn, like yourself, Prosper, rather than some of the other platforms. So Jon Goehring on LinkedIn. The last name spelling is a little funny, but it's Goehring, Jon Goehring, up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there, and I definitely respond to messages. So if you have a podcast idea that you just want to throw around or get feedback on, or, hey, check out one of my podcast episodes, I'd be happy to. I love listening to podcasts and just talking content creation and storytelling.
Absolutely. And I will obviously put all those links in the show notes below, and then just make people find those. Now, you're absolutely right about LinkedIn, because on LinkedIn, no one is going to say they're rocket scientists when they're not. But, on other platforms, you could lie about being an astronaut when you're actually not that, etc. Now, there's one thing that I've actually come across, John, maybe you can help me out with this. So many people, when they come on my podcast, they're like, oh, are you going to cut out all the ums and ahs? And, is that something that I need to listen to it first, and things like that. Now, there's a lot of people that are very particular, and I think that's the one thing that stops them from actually creating, because they want perfection, but that comes with time, right? I mean, what's your take on things of that nature? And, how do you approach your work, especially, in the way that you are always churning out content like this?
Well, comparison is the thief of joy, and sometimes perfection is the thief of authenticity, right? A lot of times we look at this high-end podcaster does this way. Again, comparison is the thief of joy. I'm not saying to not aspire to those high-end podcasters, but at what expense are you taking out all of that stuff? I edit, like I edit the shows, and that's one of the things where depending on your brand, I work with some people who have more professional brands, and they really want to come across as clean, but maybe they're not the most well-spoken people. I hope they aren't listening right now, but you know what I mean, right? And they say a lot of those ums and ahs, and so do I, and blah 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 blah. They'll ramble on some trail that probably shouldn't be included in the episode, and I edit those a lot more ruthlessly than I'll edit somebody else who it's their brand to be just authentically them. And I believe that sometimes perfection can be the thief of authenticity. And I also believe that sometimes the idea of perfection also stops people from starting, like you said. And we talked about earlier, the number one trap that people starting podcasts or creating any content fall into is that they make themselves the hero. I believe the number two trap is that they don't start. They think they have to be perfect. Don't I need like a 4K camera to? No, there's no rules, right? There's no rules. Do you want one? Sure. Maybe it's a good idea to get one down the road, but there's no rules. Just start. When you don't start, you never go anywhere, right? What is it? Wayne Gretzky. I don't know if you guys watch hockey in Australia. Probably not, right? That's a rugby and soccer, right? But he's a hockey player, right? The idea is his famous quote is you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. Right, which is true in any scenario. So that's why I feel like just starting off, people, because of the idea that things need to be perfect because of what we see on social media and all these perfectly crafted videos and profiles and stuff, now we need to be perfect. And that's not always the case. Sometimes perfection robs authenticity.
No, that's amazing. Now, Jon, I mean, obviously we could go on and on. I mean, just the sound of your voice just made me think, oh, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be the one interviewing here. I thought I was just listening to you throughout. So
I hope I haven't rambled too much because I can get a little wordy. That's my wife.
I'm just joking. So what's next? I mean, obviously you're riding this wave of sound, podcasting, audiobooks, and things of that nature. But also, there's this new wave where people are sort of auto dubbing or auto creating with AI, and it's just all just going out of I don't know. I just don't feel like it's very authentic. What do you see this industry looking like, say, in the next coming years, and what's your stake in it?
I don't know. Well, I don't know where I see it going, and that is the scary thing. I will admit it's uneasy when you hear, oh, this audiobook was produced by 11 Labs, which is a auto-generated voiceover service, right? And I'm listening to it. I'm like, dang, that doesn't sound too bad. Now, right now, I do think there are some issues with AI voiceover, right? Like, you can usually tell, and most people, I think, can also tell, like, that sounds a little off. Like, you ever see those TikTok videos, and it's like that, yeah, and you could tell, like, right away. But at the same time, who are we to say that it won't get to a point where we can't tell, right? I can't say that, and that's why I try not to pride myself in exactly what I do, like audiobook production, voiceover, commercials, radio personality work, because you just never know. What I do know is, going back to what we talked about earlier, the oldest profession in humankind is storytelling. The oldest pastime is storytelling. Storytelling isn't going to go anywhere. And I don't know how that's going to look. I already leverage some AI tools today to help with audio clarity and video clarity and even some minor editing tweaks, right? I already use some AI tools. So great, use it. I think it's an awesome thing. But it's not going to, if we think that it's going to replace storytelling or the human element completely, we're fooling ourselves. And I believe we're setting ourselves up for failure, especially in a world that values authenticity and trust more than anything. What builds trust most? It's a real person. You, me, having a conversation like this. We can use AI tools to make the editing of this smoother and faster and easier. That's great. I got no problem with that. But down the road, I definitely still see myself doing what I'm doing, but also being open to the fact that it might look different because of these tools. And I think that's okay.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate your stance on that, because it's also the things that we're exploring just to see, what's next, what's on the frontier. But as we have established, if you utilize the podcast not as the end goal or the price, but the actual entry point into your business, it actually really makes life a whole lot easier. Now, Jon, I can't thank you enough for the time that you spent on the show today. I mean, thank you so much for sharing your journey, your vulnerabilities, and also the lessons that you've distilled along the way. And I genuinely believe our listeners today not only heard voice of radio, but also parts of themselves in your journey and your story. And I can't wait to see what people are going to do with this information.
Prosper, thank you so much for having me on. I love your platform. Everything you're talking about with Own Your Media is revolutionary, next level stuff. Everybody should definitely check out your work. Thank you again for having me on, man. This was such a fun conversation.
Absolutely. And for those that are listening right now, if you liked this episode, please just share it with someone who's been wrestling with content or trust issues within their business, or someone who's trying to find their voice. And I think the team and also Jon at StoryTrust Media will help you tell your story so you can earn their trust. All right. And while you're at it, why don't you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the upcoming episodes where we're going to be talking about, ideas that will help you create a business that's profitable and enjoyable. Now, thank you so much for listening. I'll see you on the next episode. Until then, keep showing up, keep telling your story, and also keep building your prosperity from the inside out. Bye for now.